Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. Today I'm joined by David to discuss the best captaincy options for double game week 32. David, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Phil. Very refreshed after the international break. We need that rest. We're like Man City players, all of us. We need a little bit of time just to, take a step back and get ready for what is now very much the business end of the season. Although I might be right in thinking that I've had a bit of a rest, but I know that a lot of people out there have been delivering it over their free hits. So and that ties perfectly into what exactly we've got to talk about today, which is you're going to captain from all the many players you want to have in your free hit squad.
Definitely more fixtures. We'll put an image of the fixture list up shortly. I had to really structure it because it's really long. So lots more matches, lots more teams playing twice, lots of good captaincy options. Although, perhaps for many people, it's a choice between two people, and that's Aguero and Sterling. They've got 33 goals and 22 assists between them this season. Wow. And they face two of the league's worst defences. So I'm going to put two questions to you. Here's the easy one. Are they the best captaincy options? And the tough question is, which is the more deserving of the captaincy?
The easy question, yes. Full stop. They're the best captain options. I mean, when we're talking about captaincy, we're looking for a number of different factors. They have all of them, I would say. I think that they will. They're both in form. They both have a decent fixture. I mean, we'd be probably captaining one of these guys if it was just a single game week and they're away at Fulham. But then, we've been given a gift from the FPL gods. Oh, they could get to play Cardiff as well, just if we weren't already excited. So form and fixture look very nice. And then the only other thing that you always want to think about is are they sure to start? And while we can't really 100% guarantee that they both start both, they'll probably both start at least one of them and be involved in the other one. So game time, because it's a double game week, is also given as well. So there's not really that much to suggest that these guys won't do well in this game week. So very much so, definitely the best two candidates. But yeah, the tough question, which one is more deserving of the captaincy? I mean, that takes a little bit more, a little bit more work, a little bit more research, really, to work that out. We can start with the underlying statistics of the two players themselves, and then we can maybe come on to their minutes a little bit after that, because I think that they're the two key factors here, really, that we look at. And so just looking at how the two players have performed over the last four matches, it's quite similar. They've got a fantastic amount of goal threat. The two of them, they're both in the top four players over the last four matches for shots on target. Sterling is joint top with Lukaku on 9. Aguero is joint second with Salah on 8. Aguero himself has had more shots. I mean, we kind of expect that. He's the striker. He's had 17. Sterling's had 13. He's also had more in the box as well, 13 in the box to Sterling's 10. But as you said, Sterling has had one more accurate shot. And perhaps maybe the crucial difference, I suppose, two ways of looking at it, I guess, in terms of time played, Sterling has played fewer minutes, which means the fact that he's, comparing with Aguero is pretty good. He's doing that in fewer minutes, so basically Aguero's had a chance every 18.8 minutes. With Sterling, it's every 21.5 minutes. So again, quite close. Maybe this is perhaps a deciding factor for some people, because I think we both agree that they both have good goal threat. Sterling clearly the more creative of the two players. He's created a chance of 70 minutes, Aguero every 106. So from that perspective, you could argue that Sterling has the broader points potential because he's both a creative and a goal threat type player.
Yeah.
But of course, there's a lot more to it than that. And that's just the last four matches. We've got some matches are away, Fulham's away, Cardiff's at home, and obviously that might sway people one way or the other as well.
Yeah, no, I was looking, just to add on to the kind of the stats, I looked at just as a season as a whole, the kind of front of house stats, the basics of goals and points, really. And points per match, Sterling has the edge over Aguero. He's averaging 7.3 and Aguero 6.3. Double digit hauls. Now, this is really key for the captaincy. Sterling's got 8. Wow. This season, Aguero has 4 and scores of 5 or more. So this is the point where you're getting to the 80th minute of the second match and you've got nothing, and you say, look, I'll just take an assist, that'll do. So Sterling has 17 scores of 5 or more. and Aguero has 17 as well. So they're both a reliable captain, Shao. And they both had 24 starts. I thought it would have been more for Aguero, but it was in fact they both had 24 starts there. But yeah, I know you had some stats about minutes as well.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, this is moving on to something that I think may actually be the deciding factor for a lot of people, and I think it will be for me as well. Is who's going to play both matches, or who's most likely to play both matches, or just who's going to get the most minutes. What we did over the international break, basically as soon as the double game weeks were confirmed, really, we went through the whole Manchester City squad, and over the 8 game weeks prior to game week 31, because of course they didn't play in that game week, how often Pep used each player when they were fit. So how many minutes, what proportion of the minutes available to them did they play in? And yeah, I mean, it was quite staggering that we some of the results. I mean, obviously Ederson top, he was using 100% of the minutes that were available to him to play in the Premier League. But second place with 91%, which was 2% more than third place, and I think that is 11% more than Sterling, was Aguero on 91% of minutes in that run. Now, obviously, there's a few little caveats just to sort of mention in there. Jesus was injured officially for one of those matches, which is actually less than you'd expect. Obviously, that then impacted on whether he played in game week 29 and 30, because I think Guardiola was just kind of trying to ease him back in. But, before that injury, Jesus wasn't injured, so he was still available. He was getting used 11% of the time in that run, and the only players who were being used less often than that were Delph and Foden in the whole squad. So, that tells a big story that Aguero is clearly the number one striker. I mean, we kind of figured that already, but I think just looking at how big that number is, the only player to have played a higher percentage of available minutes in the Man City squad than Aguero was Ederson. So then when we compare that with Sterling, it's a lot lower. So he was involved in 80.6% of potential minutes. I think it was 6 starts, 2 appearances from the bench that lasted around half an hour, and he completed 90 minutes on 4 occasions, whereas Aguero completed it on 2, but played over 80 minutes, or around over 80 minutes in 6. So there's a huge difference in terms of their how often they're used in these league matches. And of course, in this period, we had a double game week, so we had matches close together. We had the League Cup final, so that was a big one for Pep as well. So some people might turn around and say to that sort of analysis, well, this next period is a lot busier than it was before. I don't think that's completely true, because, there are still hallmarks that appear in both. You've got big cup matches because we've got Champions League coming up. You've got Premier League matches close together. To use double game week 25 as an example, Aguero started both matches. Admittedly, only played an hour in the second. Played an hour against Chelsea, I think it was, the week after. But he'd already done his damage by that point. That just tells the story. So whereas with Sterling, didn't start both double game week matches. So that for me is the deciding factor, if I'm honest. Because if I want to captain someone in a double game week, I want someone who's going to start both matches, and Aguero looks to be the one to do it.
I agree. I had a look after the 3 international breaks this season, and that that confirms that as well. So Aguero started all 3 of those matches that were after the international break, but on reduced minutes. But this was earlier this season where his minutes were being managed slightly. So game week 5, 53 minutes, 2 assists. Game week 9, 65 minutes and a goal. So returns in both of those. Game week 13, which was the West Ham game. People remember that for Sterling, and I'll come to him in a second. He got 80 minutes, but blanked in that one. Meanwhile, Sterling has only played 2 out of 3 of those games that immediately came after an international break, which makes me think, given the FA Cup semi-final and given Champions League coming up within a short space of time, there is a high possibility that Sterling will not start both matches. But he did. But if he does start, wow! So he got a goal game week 5, 73 minutes. Game week 9 didn't play. Game week 13, that was the West Ham game. He got 16 points in that, and coincidentally 73 minutes as well. So if we look at history, Sterling will definitely play one, and then get subbed off at 73 minutes, and may or may not play the other one. But whereas Aguero, I agree with you, I think he's going to play. He's currently my captain. That's what swings it.
Yeah,
but if
too.
all of that we've discussed just now, all of the different goals and assists, and also looking at away as well. So away from home, Aguero has 15 goals. Away from home, both Sterling and Aguero have 3 goals, but Sterling has 5 assists. So he's got that broader spread of points as well, which is quite good. So that's what. If I thought Sterling was going to start both, he would be my captain, but I don't. So I'm going to play it safe with Aguero. But
I think that's the way to go.
But I think if people have been backing Sterling over Aguero all season, I think it's a good time. I think it's a good thing to do, because even one game from Sterling, he could easily outscore Aguero those 2 games. And I think just on paper, if we thought both going to start, Sterling would be the one. Yeah, I mean,
I think.
Sorry,
I think we should talk about the defences of the 2 teams they're playing.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that they're particularly poor, but give some number to them, because I think that sort of, for me, furthers the case for Aguero over Sterling. I'll just get to that in a minute. But Fulham last 4 matches, only West Ham have conceded more shots in the box, and when you look at Cardiff, only West Ham and Watford have conceded more big chances. That was 12 for Cardiff. So they're the kind of teams that are just going to jettison chances everywhere. And if you are worried about Aguero's minute management, he'll be brought off after an hour. He'll probably be brought off after an hour because he's just scored a hat trick. So the minute management for Aguero is not something that I think should really worry people at all. Even if Jesus is fitter now and there's Champions League matches coming up, just these fixtures are the kind of thing where whoever plays in those, even if they get half an hour, they are certain to get something, because these 2 defences have been poor all season. They're poor now. It's a bit of a, obviously it's a no-brainer to captain these 2 either one of these 2 players, but even minute management shouldn't put you off, because it's Man City were able to put 5 past Chelsea in the first hour, I think it was. So they do the same against these 2 particular teams.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, I just think these are the runaway choices. I think they were for most people. However, they are not the only good players. They're not the only players with good fixtures, and they're not the only players who are capable of hauls. For those who aren't interested in captaining one of these 2, Hazard could be the man. Now, I know a lot of people have been burnt by him, and he's a bit of a dirty word in FPL circles, really. But they take on Brighton at home and Cardiff away, so they've got a great pair of fixtures there. He's actually scored 33 points this season in the reverse fixtures of those 2, so we know that he can accumulate the points against them. But will his teammates let him shine? Will Sarri let him shine? Is Higuain possibly worth considering for the armband? I say that with a slight laugh after talking so long about Aguero and Sterling. But and also, what a Chelsea defender. Defenders often do well in double game weeks, and I just got a feeling this could be an Azpilicueta or David Luiz type of double game week. But yeah, what do you think about the Chelsea assets?
Well, I think, I always like to try and start by being positive. I think Hazard has one thing over Aguero and Sterling, in that I would be very surprised if he didn't play 90 minutes in both matches, because he has to, really. He's not really been involved in the European scene for them this year, and that hasn't really been a problem yet. They seem to be coping just fine there. Obviously out of the FA Cup, so you don't need to worry about that. Basically, he is just the talisman player for Chelsea, and there's just no way that Sarri can afford to bench him for either of those games when they're in the race to finish in a nice European spot. So that is one thing that he does have over your Sterlings and your Agueros, who are going to be needed, you'd imagine, for the FA Cup, the Champions League, or both. So I will give him that. Obviously, the fixtures aren't bad either. So if we're going to say that Man City are going to thrash Cardiff, then we also think Chelsea could too. So he has that as well. Brighton, I'm not so sure. Obviously, it's at Stamford Bridge, but they tend to sort of kind of flatten to deceive sometimes in these home matches against teams that they should be beating. And but Brighton away from home haven't been great this year. So I mean, obviously the fixtures are good, but I don't think they're quite as good as Man City's fixtures. And then, of course, when we look at the actual form and the underlying statistics of a Sterling or Aguero versus Hazard, it's not for me, it's not really a comparison that really makes me that excited about Hazard. So we talked about Sterling, 9 shots on target, Aguero 8. 17 shots total for Aguero, 13 for Sterling. You move on to Hazard, 9 shots. So 4 fewer than Sterling in roughly the same minutes. 6 in the box. So again, considerably fewer than those two, and just 4 on target, so half as many as Aguero. And Sterling's obviously on 9 as well, so very similar comparison there as well. Chances created is a bit higher, so it's 8 chances created in that period versus 4 for Sterling and 3 for Aguero. So maybe you could say that, but this is obviously where you come in and ask the question, well, what about his teammates? And do I trust his teammates? Not hugely. I think a chance created by a City player is obviously always more likely to be scored than a Chelsea one. So that's why I wouldn't consider Hazard. I mean, he is the type of player who, as you've mentioned, is capable of big hauls, obviously against both of these two teams. So I would say, really, you look at Hazard, you are kind of, I don't want to say in sort of a desperate position, but if you're hoping to make up some ground. But of course, as we always say in these situations, what you are trying to say, if you're going to captain Hazard for a differential reason, you're basically saying you think that Sterling or Aguero won't haul in at least one of these matches against Fulham and Cardiff, and I just can't see that. So I think that, for me, that's why I can't consider Hazard.
Yeah, and also just to put it into perspective there, so we know about the underlying stats there and the potential of Sterling and Aguero, but with those stats that you were reading out with Hazard, so his 8 chances last 4, that's the same as Milivojevic, Schlupp and Robertson, 2 defenders there, and Milivojevic is on a par with Hazard in terms of chance creation. And his shots on target 4, that's the same as Perez at Newcastle, Batshuayi, and Brighton's Jahanbash, or I don't know why I put him in, because he's one of the players, one of the many I can't pronounce. But I just put him in there just to show Hazard is mixing with very, very average company, and he's not mixing with the big guns. But his price tag is a big gun price tag. So I think, part of my analysis and part of your analysis there, for me, is actually making me wonder whether I should have Hazard at all, let alone consider him for the captaincy. But I think I will, because I do think of his matches against them, and I know he can shine against minnows. He's also been doing well on international duty as well. It's just whether he can carry that on into club form or not. Now, another... Before about 3 weeks ago, I looked at this fixture and I thought, I'm going to captain Paul Pogba, or maybe Lukaku, who's starting to come. I think he was scoring one of his many braces in a row. I'm not so sure now, and I don't think they're in the running for many people. I know we've got the captain poll and pretty much dominated by the City players and not Pogba, but they are good fixtures. I think they're taking on 2 sides, Wolves and Watford. They're likely to be more focused on their FA Cup semi-final clash. But is that enough to turn our attention to the likes of Pogba and even Rashford and Lukaku, if they are fit? They are currently an injury doubt.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, just to hark back to what we were talking about at the top in terms of the various factors that I want, one of them is form, and I don't think that Man United players are showing something that excites me enough to captain them, even if we think the fixtures are going to be decent. I think it's a big if that Wolves and Watford are going to rest players for that FA Cup game. I know that they obviously want to have that, they want to go into that game without injuries, but at the same time, they might want to go into it fresh. One of the managers might say, well, if I give my players the week off, by the time they come to the FA Cup semi-final, then they're not ready. They've had the international break, and then they've not played, and then now they've got the FA Cup semi-final, and they haven't played a competitive fixture for X amount of days. So I think it's a big if that Wolves and Watford will just roll over. But then just for it's just unknowns, So like Lukaku, we don't know if he's fit. That obviously impacts on whether or not we look at Lukaku or Rashford. I think, as you were saying with Hazard, I think with some of these players, it's a big if we even have them in the free hit squad, let alone captain them. So then that's obviously when you start to say, well, because I definitely can't go without Sterling and Aguero. Again, they just don't compare. Pogba has dropped off statistically. Had to kind of deputise for Matic, and that didn't help him. But even when Matic came back, kind of didn't really have a great game against Arsenal. So over the last 4 matches, again, he just doesn't compare with those Man City players. It's 8 shots, 4 in the box, 4 on target, and as you mentioned there, that means he's keeping the same sort of company for shots on target as Hazard was, and it wasn't impressive. So, chances created down to 4 as well. So Pogba, at this stage, I'm in an iron about even having him. I probably will, but when you are not sure if you're even going to own the player for the free hit squad, then definitely. It really does suggest that captain is a bit too much.
Now Lukaku, if Lukaku is fit, and that's going to require a big assurance at the press conference later this week that he is. He's the one I would consider as a kind of a vice captain, perhaps, because he has, over the last 4 matches he's played, had 8 big chances. So that's 4 times as many as Pogba. He's had 14 shots and he scored 4 goals. That's really good. That's the kind of form I want, and he was in that form.
Yeah, it's really good.
But that injury, we're not sure how much, how severe that injury is, but it's severe enough for him to not play twice for his country. So he's back, and look out. Later this week, I'll be talking to Neil. He'll have all the latest from the press conferences, and I should be keeping a keen ear on that, because that could be a big factor in how my team shapes up. And I do think, although Sterling and Aguero, it's undoubtedly going to be one of those two, but the kind of next tier down, I think Lukaku would perhaps lead that chase, or perhaps it could be Harry Kane. Now, he's a player that people are umming and ahhing about whether to bring in. There's less interest in him this season. Despite just scoring 17 times, it's considered not a good season for him, but 17, not bad. And he's also added creativity to his game with 6 assists. That's 3 times as many as he notched last season. With only 15% ownership, he looks a really strong differential option, not just to own, but perhaps to captain as well. But can he match the likes of Aguero and Sterling? What do you think on Kane?
Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, we did a poll on the site a few days ago asking people of the premium options that you could have in a free hit squad who are playing twice, who would you most likely leave out? And Kane won, or rather lost, that poll, and he was the person that people were considering not including. So when you see that of a player who has a pedigree of his level, then there's an opportunity there. Whether or not it's for captaincy, again, I don't know, because really you've got to compare it with the Man City players, and just the fixtures for me is the biggest reason why he doesn't really compare, because obviously it's going to start with Liverpool away. So I don't think for the captaincy, but certainly if you're looking for some ways of maybe going for a free hit squad that is a bit different to the template, then maybe he's the way to go. Because we were just talking before he came on. I mean, the number of shots that he's had in the last 4 matches is very, very high. So it's he's had 16 in that period. So that's 4 a match. Only Aguero and Higuain have had more. Accuracy, it's not quite as good as Sterling and Aguero. It's just 6. Inside the box, not as many as we perhaps like, or as we are as used to with Kane, just 9. But if you've got a kind of a gut feeling that you think he might do well, then I can understand it. I mean, Liverpool away, I'm pretty sure he scored a brace there last season, so there's no reason why he can't.
I think it was either a brace or it was almost a brace, because I think he may have missed a penalty.
I'm not sure. You're right.
I'm trying to remember, but nevertheless he does have a really good track record at Anfield.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he has a very poor record against Palace. In fact, Spurs do. They win, but they only win by 1-0. I think they've all been 1-0 for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So
there we go. I mean, there's reasons in there to be sort of optimistic, but also reasons in there to be sort of cautious. So I think good differential for selecting him, but he is a differential for the captaincy. Whether or not he's a good differential for it is another matter, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he has scored 3 goals in his last 4, and I've also outlined his goals over the season as well. He is doing well. But he's not a mega score. It hasn't really an eye-catching hat-trick, for example. So it's slightly under the radar. And I think because of his price as well, he's quite hard to fit in to a team, especially if you're not free hitting as well. In terms of Liverpool at home, in terms of shots, big chances and goal conceded, they're still one of the best home defences, even though people think they're not. So they've had 2 clean sheets out of the last 4. And they've only conceded 4 big chances in their last 4 as well, so that's on average 1 a match. And Palace away, they are among one of the worst travelling sides No clean sheets in the last 4 road trips, and they've conceded 78 shots, the joint 4th worst. I think he has the fixtures there. And if I saw a team with Kane captain, I wouldn't look at that and go, "You crazy fool." I would think that's fair enough, because I think he's
definitely
a strong differential option. Also, if you're not free hitting, those that aren't free hitting are probably very unlikely to have Kane in their team. So he would be not only a differential to those who aren't free hitting, but also to those that are free hitting as well, with that low ownership overall. Not for me. I can't see past Aguero or Sterling, but I think we've got to outline the options for some people, and he might fit the mentality of some of those that we're looking at here. Looking elsewhere, Aguero, Sterling, keep mentioning them. Any other players we think we should mention, particularly for those that fancy going for some ultra differential captaincy pick?
Well, I mean, we talked about it before, and you went down this route for double game week 25, and it paid off, although not for the captaincy, but just for selection. That's just defenders, and we've kind of loosely mentioned them already. And I guess, it is a bold call to make, bearing in mind, we've got some attacking players who look very strong. But if you're thinking about any, then, an Edison, a Laporte, or possibly even a Kyle Walker could pay off, because Fulham and Cardiff's attack hasn't been particularly great recently. And obviously Man City, we did a piece on the goalkeepers who are going to play 2 fixtures, and there's none of the goalkeepers who are going to play twice in the last 4 matches building up to double game week 32 have conceded fewer shots on target than Edison. So and he's got the highest save percentage as well. So that tells me that Man City stand a pretty decent chance of keeping the clean sheet. I think it's 4 in their last 5. So I mean, Edison, if you're going to have him, maybe. I know that most people will probably look to a Laporte, perhaps with a bit more goal threat, or maybe Walker with a bit more assist potential could end up with a double figure haul. So worth thinking about them. Obviously Chelsea as well, Cardiff and Brighton, again, they're not 2 attacks that are particularly amazing. Chelsea have actually conceded a fairly high number of shots on target, but Kepa's made a lot of saves, and a lot of those saves have actually been from shots that come from outside the box, which historically, when that's happening for a goalkeeper, that's good. That's when you want to get in on that goalkeeper, because it's quite easy for them to rack up save points and clean sheets, because of the saves they're being asked to make are quite easy. So possibly a Chelsea defender, maybe a Chelsea goalkeeper like Kepa. But I mean, as you said, once we get to this sort of stage, this is for the people who are being ultra brave, because again, it just comes down to, and I think the bottom line for this is, if you are going to deviate from Sterling and Aguero, it shouldn't be because you think they're going to do okay, or you think they're going to do well. You have to really be saying, I think that that they're going to flop. And the chances of that for me are so low that it would just be, it's not worth the risk.
I agree. I do think that neither Aguero or Sterling will be the highest point scorer this week. I think it will be a defender, but guessing which one is very tricky. Whereas all of what we've been outlining, history, current form, the fixtures, it all points to one of Sterling or Aguero. But I do think it could end up being someone like Azpilicueta or David Luiz, because if they can get 2 clean sheets and a goal, suddenly it's looking pretty good, especially with bonus added on as well. But as I said, it's really hard to do that. But we've seen before, Laporte this season, and in previous seasons, Asu Okotu, I remember, at Spurs, was my highest double game week scorer one time, with over 20 points. And I remember in seasons past as well, Vidic at Manchester United, everyone captaining Rooney or Ronaldo, and it was Vidic who in fact trumped both of them, and that can happen. So I do think that, but I think you're going to have to be brave and bold to avoid those captaining those City guys. But David, thanks so much for that, and good luck with the game week and whichever decision you make.
Cheers, and to you as well.